And Van called me a few weeks later. He said, I want you to come up here. I want you to join the band. And I went up and joined the band. Mm-hmm. And they were on West Coast now.
Yeah.
And they had played at the Troubadour here sometime in 1970, if I'm not mistaken, whenever they did the Domino and those songs. Mm-hmm. And I had met Van just for a minute. Hi, Doug. Hi, Van. And so anyway, Van said, we're going to start a band, you know. And that was where the thing happened where he fired the band the night after I got there. That's when that happened.
Gotcha.
It's a long time ago.
You had played yeah, of course. Amazing that you can. I can't remember what I did last week, so I'm
I don't
very
know what I
impressed
did this
about 50
morning.
years ago.
And so anyway,
it was after a Troubadour gig, though. Okay.
So
wow, I think I've heard stuff about that.
I met him at the Troubadour, and the band was good. They had John Platania on guitar.
Yeah,
he's the guy who came up with that lick for Domino. That is one of the signature licks of all time.
Totally.
And Brown Eyed Girl has another signature lick of all time. That was Hugh McCracken in New York. Uh-huh. And I've told people, if you want the 5 greatest guitar licks ever, I mentioned Brown Eyed Girl first, because it's ad-libbed from top to bottom. It's never exactly the same. Yeah. And Van once played me the outtakes, and he said we had to do a bunch of takes because Hugh kept fucking it up. But I could hear that what he was onto was amazing. Da, 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 all that stuff. And he finally got it all together, and that's that take. No fixes, no overdubs, a live take, Brown Eyed Girl. They added the vocals later, the background vocals, sha-la-la-la, all that stuff. So anyway, I go back there, we put the band together, we play at the boarding house and at the Village, San Francisco, and the band sounded great immediately. The guys from Boston were in the band, and so we had played together before. Daoud Shar on drums, John Klingberg on bass, and Jack Schroer on alto. And Colin Tilton had just left the band. He was a Boston guy, too, that had been with Van when they played at the Troubadour. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I'm up there, and Van said, well, I did some recording, last year, and I'm going to keep 2 of the songs. Almost Independence Day and Listen to the Lion. That was done with the Tupelo Honey Band from the year before, and that's where Ronnie Montrose played with Van, and I think Bill Church was there then already. And I think they gave up time with they had a group called Sawbuck. Mm-hmm. I don't remember, the timing isn't right for me. I can't remember.
Cool name.
But I think they left Sawbuck to play on Tupelo Honey, and Ted realized Ronnie is a good arranger. He comes up with great guitar licks. He was a funny guy, man. He was really fun. And so anyway, we started the band, and Church stayed with the band. We went to Pacific High, recorded Jackie Wilson Said and Gypsy, and that was it. We did some more gigs around. We went to places like Lodi and Reno, where I met Chuck Ruff, the drummer from Edgar Winter's band. Mm-hmm. And we stayed at Chuck's house once when I was playing with Van. This is now early '72. And Van said, we got to record some more. After we'd played a number of places, I don't remember, I could make a list, but we played all over the place.
Sure. And
we hadn't done that big, and I think yes, we did. We went on that West Coast tour. That started in Vancouver, then went to Salem, Oregon, then went to Santa Barbara, then Santa Monica Civic, San Diego Convention Center. And that was a successful tour. And that tour was right after we tried to record this St. Dominic's preview record, but the song St. Dominic's Preview wasn't right. The others were pretty good. And Van and I got into the fight about how much he was going to what he was not going to pay this guy Steve Funk, who played amazingly on piano when we went up to UC Davis and up there Reno and all that stuff. That's when we met Chuck Ruff. I'm starting to organize it now. And they called me one day. They had the LA guys up, and Van didn't like what they were playing because they were guys caught up in the whole Steely Dan mania, where it's a very clean, tight way of playing and a little abstract. Van doesn't like abstraction. He wants it closer to the roots. simple chords. Don't give me a minor 7 flat 5 into G7 raised sharp 9 and flat 5. You don't do that with Van. Although I put a little bit of that in. I will be there. A song that we did for St. Dominic's preview. But anyway, so I went up there after all the tracks had been done except that song, and that's when I met Ted. Again, second time I met him. Ted and Don were there, and there was a guy named Jim Gaines who had recorded the songs, but I don't remember if Jim or Don did the engineering that night. But I brought an amp of my own and a guitar. I had just bought an ES345 Gibson that today would be worth 50 grand. It was an unbelievable guitar. It's on St. Dominic's preview on that one song. And a Gibson amp that went with it, Super Maestro. And Ted had his little Princeton and a Strat, and I said, Ted, that Strat will not work on this song, because I had never heard the damn thing that I remember, and I just remember saying, this thing needs this guitar, a richer sound. And the song had nothing going for it. Everyone's just treading water. Typical studio musicians, I'm going to get paid. He's a lunatic, so I'll just hide. And the song had nothing going. I did like the background vocals that they had already recorded. So they said, well, run it by me a couple times. They ran it by me. Strange song structured. The verse has either 13 or 14 bars. It's a strange number of bars, but it feels perfectly, Van can do that. It feels perfect. And I listened to it 2 times, made a few notes to myself, looked at them. I said, give me a minute here. And I had an idea for the intro. And they played it. I said, okay, I want to practice it once, run the tape by, put on the headphones. And I played through it. And I said, okay, I'm ready now. Van came out smiling at the Cheshire Cat, and he goes, you're done. So I had never played it. The first time I ever played it is what he wanted. Wow. It was just messy enough. What he hadn't liked with all the guys like from here was that they were too precise all the way through. And he said, this is a song about being confused about what you're doing with your life. If you listen to the lyrics of that song, we're trying to make the whole thing blend in San Francisco. It's part of the lyrics. And the song, he said, needed a little uncertainty. And the way and he told me before I did the take, ad lib, do not, there's one lick I was fooling around with that he liked for the intro. And later, it was the only overdub. He wanted that lick again near the end, in the last verse. So it's a little intro thing. Da, da, da. So anyway, so I did it. It was one take, and that was it. Don and Ted mixed the whole record, except they couldn't get Jackie Wilson to have the excitement. It was a song that was a train wreck that worked.
Yeah.
Rick Schlosser is a guy who used to play behind the beat. On that song, Van really gave him hell before we did. He says, you got to kick ass here. Because Van wanted to be on top of the beat, and Rick was the star of that take. I mean, if you listen to the drums on that, they're outrageous fills, things that took a lot of dexterity. And Rick redeemed himself with Van at that moment. Van fired him a few weeks later, though. Why? Because Van gets crazy ideas. He was sitting up at his house on 89th Spring Lane in Fairfax one day with the whole band, asking everyone, what do you like? Oh, I like Otis Redding. Oh, I like The Who. Oh, I like Led Zeppelin. Van loved Stairway to Heaven. And at one point he said, maybe we should do that. We never did. Wow. But Van is a trip, man. He's very bright, reads a lot. And
was he drinking a lot at this time?
No, I forgot to tell you that when I first met him in Woodstock, it was Christmas Eve when I met him. I had to walk up the hill because the car didn't have chains. Mary Martin had to drop me off the bottom of the hill, Ohio Mountain in Woodstock. I don't know how I remember this shit. And it took me an hour to find the house at the top of the hill, taking my amp and my guitar up 100 feet, going back for my suitcase, and step by step up the hill. And some guy told me it's the second house up there at the top on the left. I found it, walked into the house, and it's Christmas Eve. I knock on the door, no answer. I knock again, no answer. I finally It was open. I opened the door, and there's the little green man standing like this, looking at the Christmas tree. Back to me. He's in the living room looking. He's not a word. I said, Van? Nothing. Zero. And all of a sudden, he looked for about 10 minutes. I was standing there, so I put my stuff over to the side, and all of a sudden he pointed to the kitchen. He says, he didn't say a word. Walks in the kitchen, sits down, and does this to me. He says, I've got to stop drinking.